right, as security threats grow around the world, the Obama administration announced plans this week to shrink America's military. 40,000 soldiers across 28 bases will be dropped from active duty, reducing the Army to its smallest size since World War II. Some of the deepest cuts would hit Alaska's Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, impacting nearly 60% of personnel there. Joining me now, Alaska Senator, member of the Armed Services Committee, Dan Sullivan, also currently serves in the U.S. Marine Corps Reserves as an infantry officer and lieutenant colonel. Sir, thank you for your time today.
Shannon, great to be here. Thank you.
All right, so bases across the country are due for these cuts. I know that you have specific concerns, as many Americans do, about the proximity of Alaska and its resources to Russia, especially as it continues to flex its muscles.
Absolutely. You know, this decision that was made just further undermines America's credibility in terms of foreign policy. The ambassador does a very good job about talking about our lack of credibility in the Iranian negotiations. It's Syrian red lines that are crossed. Congress is actually, we're trying to bolster the administration's credibility in certain ways. We had a defense bill recently that passed with 71 senators who voted for it. And there was a provision in there saying we need to increase forces in the Asia Pacific, not decrease them. We need to put together an Arctic strategy. You know, you mentioned the Russians are being very aggressive, moving military forces in the Arctic, and yet the administration undermines that, undermines its own credibility by dramatically cutting forces at JBER, as you mentioned, in Alaska, but throughout the country. They cut the only airborne combat brigade in the Asia Pacific. Weakness is provocative, and expect more provocations from Russia, from China, from North Korea when we're exhibiting weakness in terms of our force structure in the Asia Pacific.
In 2013, the Army, in budget documents it prepared, said that going below 450,000 troops, Army troops, could prevent prevailing in a war, should it come to that. So we're getting to that point. If sequestration kicks in, we're talking about an additional 30,000 being cut from the Army. So by its own warning, we're getting to a very dangerous place.
I think we're getting to a very dangerous place, exactly. And we in the Senate Armed Services Committee, we tried to bolster the spending by close to $40 billion. The President has threatened to veto that, which to me is not only irresponsible, it would be dangerous. And you know, you talk about sequester, which was passed in 2011, but the threat level internationally has changed dramatically. And one of the things that sequester does, it's bean counting. It's not strategic thinking. So for example, the DoD gets cut at higher percentages than, say, the IRS or the EPA. I'm someone who believes in significantly increasing defense spending, decreasing, certainly, EPA or IRS funding, but we need to get back to strategy, not this bean counting that is undermining our national security.
Okay, so what can you do personally? What can lawmakers do? Because I know a number of lawmakers say they were sort of blindsided about this whole decision-making process. They didn't know it was coming. I know that you have put a hold on a DoD official who was set to be confirmed.
Yes.
So where do you go from here?
Well, the first thing we're doing is we're going to have hearings to have the defense officials explain what they're trying to do, explain how dramatically taking our force structure, as you mentioned, down to pre-World War II levels in a threat environment that Henry Kissinger testified in front of Armed Services Committee, saying is the most complex threat environment since the end of World War II. And we're now at pre-World War II Army levels. We're going to have Obama administration officials come and try to explain, hey, this is why we're cutting the DoD budget dramatically, even more than the IRS and EPA, and try to make that case. I don't think they're going to be able to do it. So we're going to be very focused on this.
Quickly, how do you respond to those who say there's so much waste? There is room for cutting in the Pentagon, and it needs to happen.
I agree. There is. But here's the big issue, and you looked at the numbers. Sometimes when the Pentagon cuts, it doesn't look at the waste. It doesn't look at bloated headquarters. It focuses on the man on the ground, the grunt, the infantry, Marine, or soldier. And you know, we have not been good about that as a country. History has not been kind to the way in which we've done it. We've done that before. You know, right now, this summer is the 65th anniversary of the outbreak of the Korean War. Look at that history. We dramatically cut our forces. They weren't ready to respond to a crisis. Thousands of soldiers were wounded and killed in the summer of 1950, 65 years ago. We can't repeat that, and that's going to be a focus of these hearings.
Well, we all owe a debt of gratitude to you and the millions of others who have served and their families who serve right along with them, too. So, Senator, keep us up to date.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thanks
Will
for your
do.
time.
Okay, thank you.